I have an unconscious bias against black people. And nobody was more surprised to learn this than me, right? I'm a black person. I'm black, has blackness, this is black. Most of my aunts and uncles are black, but despite that fact, I have an unconscious bias against black people. And how do I know this? I know this because I was able to take a test. The test was developed by Harvard University. The name of the test is called the implicit association test. This test tests your subconscious brain. And it does it similarly to the test we just took. It assesses how fast you respond to stimuli and how accurately you respond to stimuli. And that's how it tests your subconscious brain. Who's taking the test? Okay, a few of you are taking the test. I want everybody to take this test at your own time. Just Google Harvard University Implicit Association Test. Please take this test. Okay? What we know about this test is of the 5 million people who have taken the implicit association test, 83% of white people who take this test come back with an unconscious bias against black people. 82%. But what we also know about this test is that 70% of black people who take this test also come back with an unconscious bias against other black people. Now, why is that? I'm going to explain this to you in the little time that we still have left to go. But I'm going to tell you this up front. You didn't stand a chance. You legitimately did not stand a chance. This is what the test looks like. You're going to see a face. It could be a black male or a white male. You're going to ask you a series of questions. You have to respond to those questions. And it's going to assess how quickly you respond and how accurately you respond to those questions. Okay? 83% of whites who take this test come back with unconscious bias against blacks. 70% of blacks who take this test come back with unconscious bias against other blacks. Why is this? Well, I'm going to take a little short history lesson. I'm going to introduce you to a man by the name of Dr. Kenneth Clark. Dr. Kenneth Clark was a child psychologist in the 1950s. He's most famous for an experiment that he did with children between the ages of 5 and 8. The experiment was called the black doll, white doll test. A real simple test. Dr. Clark on one side of the table, on the table, 2 dolls. The dolls are exactly the same. The only thing that's different about the 2 dolls, one doll is black, and one doll is white. In fact, if you ever go to the newest Smithsonian Museum of African American History in Washington, D.C., they have those dolls on display if you go visit that museum. Now, on the other side of the table is a child between the ages of 5 and 8 years old. And Dr. Clark asks a series of questions. Which doll is the black doll? Which doll is the white doll? Which doll is the pretty doll? Which doll is the ugly doll? Which doll is the nice doll? Which doll is the mean doll? And then finally, which doll looks most like you? Right? Results of the test were horrifying. All the kids were able to identify which was the black doll, which was the white doll. But the vast majority of children found the white doll to be the pretty doll, the black doll to be the ugly doll. The white doll to be the nice doll, the black doll to be the mean doll. And then finally, all the kids were able to identify which doll looked most like them. Now, the rationale for why the test was done so poorly is the time in which this test took place. The test took place in the 1950s. In the 1950s, we operated under a rule of law called Jim Crow. Anybody heard of Jim Crow? Right? So you saw the white water fountains, black water fountains, white entrances, black entrances, things of that nature. Right? Anybody know why it's called Jim Crow?
The name was Jim Crow?
Right? Absolutely. It was named after, in the 1800s, there was an actor by the name of Thomas Dartmouth Rice. And Thomas Rice was a white man, and he became really famous for portraying one character. And that character he portrayed was a recently freed, formerly enslaved black man by the name of Jim Crow. And he performed this character in what we call blackface. He used either black grease paint or burnt cork put on his face and hands to give the impression as if he was black. And when he portrayed this character over the top. So he spoke broken English, he was lazy, he was a thief, he couldn't be trusted. In fact, any stereotype that you've ever heard about black people, they've actually traced back to the portrayal of this one character by Mr. Rice. Now, why do they call it Jim Crow laws? Called Jim Crow laws because in the South, in the 1960s, the 1950s, the legislators wanted to separate us by race. So they used this Jim Crow character to separate by race. Right? I told you he was over the top. He was lazy, he was a thief, things of that nature. And so what happened was the legislator said, you do not want to sleep in the same bed as Jim Crow because Jim Crow is good. And you do not want to eat from the same silverware or drink out of the same water fountain as Jim Crow because Jim Crow isn't clean. And you wouldn't want to live in the same neighborhood it as Jim Crow because he's a thief. And Jim Crow became this euphemism for black. And so they turned it into Jim Crow laws. So, if you're ever on Jeopardy, give me my promise. All right? All right. And if you didn't know that, don't worry about it. It's not your fault. We do not teach our history. And because we don't teach our history, a lot of people are unaware of that fact. I just want to make sure you do that. So, I want to introduce you to a young girl named Linda Brown. Linda grew up in the 1950s, grew up in Topeka, Kansas. In the 1950s, in Topeka, Kansas, schools were separated. Black schools, white schools. Linda was black. So one day, Linda wanted to go to the all-white school. So her mom said, fine, I'll register you for the all-white school. So Linda's mom registered her for the all-white school. First day of school, she shows up, walks up the stairs, met by the principal. Principal said she can't come in. She said, why can't I come in? Oh, this is an all-white school. We have a school for black students, it's right down the street. You can go to that school. Linda said, I don't want to go to that school, I'll go to this school. Principal wouldn't let her in. Linda and her mom hired a lawyer, a young lawyer from the NAACP. That lawyer's name? Thurgood Marshall. Now, we know Thurgood Marshall to be the first black Supreme Court justice, but at the time, Thurgood Marshall was a newly recent grad from Howard Law School. He took the case, argued the case all the way up to the United States Supreme Court. When he argued that case, he used Dr. Kenneth Clark's experiment. And he said that we are doing a disservice to our children because of these Jim Crow laws. We have a group of society that thinks they're superior because they can walk into any restaurant. They can sleep in any hotel. They can sit anywhere they want on the bus. We have another group that feels they're inferior because they can't walk into any hotel. They can't go to any restaurant, and they can't sit anywhere they want on the bus, right? Argue this case. In the decision that we may or may not see again, 9-0, unanimous, Supreme Court agreed with Thurgood Marshall. And on that date, legal segregation ended. We all know that case, of course, to be Brown versus the Board of Education. In the 1954, legal segregation ended in America. Fast forward, 60 years. Child psychologists got together and said, we live in integrated societies, we have integrated schools, we live in integrated neighborhoods. Let's replicate that test today and see what happens, right? So I'm going to try to do that for you. Okay. I'm going to play it. I don't know. Can you see?
Can we turn off the lights?
Yeah, can you guys in the back dim the lights a little bit?
Oh, the panel's by you.
Is it by me?
Behind the TV there.
Nope. Oh God, all it's gonna go off. All right, hold on. All right, that works. I'll try to do that. All right, so here's the test, and I just want you to watch the kid's face during the test.
Which doll is the black doll? And which one is the white doll? Which doll is the pretty doll? Which doll is the nice doll? Which doll is the bad doll? Which doll is the nice doll? And which doll is the bad doll? And why is that doll pretty?
Because she's white and you have 2 eyes.
And which doll is the ugly doll? Why is that doll ugly?
Because he's black.
Which doll looks most like you?
Me
Yeah, which one looks like you?
and that one.
All right. So I've seen that video, oh man, thousands of times. Every time I see it, it gives me the same effect. I hope it works. Right. But I had the same effect, right? So I told you to watch the faces of those kids. And the one kid, he said, which one, why is that doll pretty? He said, because he's white. Why is that doll ugly? He said, because he's black. You see his face? He's like, oh, I'm black, right? And then the last girl, after she's gone through this whole question, all these questions, and asked, which doll looks most like me? Is that like me? And now it's dawned on her, the mean doll and the ugly doll, the one she says looks most like her. Powerful. 60 years removed from Brown versus Board. 60 years of integrated society, 60 years of going to the same schools, same exact results. Why? I told you when I started, from the time you were small to the time you're the age you are right now, you are constantly being bombarded with information, right? 11 million bits, you're only consciously aware of 40. The rest doesn't dissipate, it gets logged away in your subconscious brain, which we access in the form of mental shortcuts. I've already told you mental shortcuts can be good, and mental shortcuts can be bad. Now, I'm going to show you, I'm just going to give you an idea of what I mean. We're going to play a game. I'm going to give you a bunch of clues. I want you, once you know the answer, just to yell out the answer, okay? I've given you half the clue. Half the clue is black. All right, everybody ready? All right, I'm thinking of an animal. Some of you might have it as a pet. If it crosses your path, it's bad luck. All right, a black cat, right? A black cat representing bad luck. All right, here's the next one. Some of you might have this person in your family. My sister says it's me. They're not like everybody else. The black sheep of the family, right? Not quite like everybody else, right? Traditional in movies, what color does the good guy wear in movies? White, right? Here I use Star Wars, and here's why I use Star Wars, which I don't understand how this happens, but I give this speech to middle school students all the way up to octogenarians. And for some reason, Star Wars crosses all those generations. I have no idea why that happens. But you also see it in Marvel, you also see it in Lord of the Rings, you also see there's a lot of movies where the good guy wears white. If the good guy wears white, what color does the bad guy wear? Black, right? Darth Vader, Darth Maul, Darth Sith, the whole damn Sith, right? All of them. They all wear black, right? In fact,
Except Black Panther.
It's what you say?
Except Black Panther.
We haven't got to that. Black Panther ain't in Star Wars. Right? So the bad guys always wear black, right? In America, what color do brides wear? Anybody know why? Purity, innocence, things of that nature. All right? What color do you wear at funerals? Black, right? Death, sorrow, despair. All these things. From the time you're small, from the time you're age right now, you're constantly being bombarded with this type of material. All right? So I got some other ones, just yell them out when you know them. This first one is a place where you buy things. It's not eggs, milk, and cheese, but like other people's kidneys.
Market.
Yeah, black market. Black market. Now, I could use other people's kidneys. I had a kidney transplant, so I could use other people's kidneys. Right? I didn't get it from the black market. That's the one you came up with, right? Right? That's the one that made you think about it. Quickly, that was quick. Everybody can barely say it. All right, in the 1950s, a group of actors and actresses that everybody thought were communists. Because they're communists, they can get no work. What was happening? They're blackballed, they're blacklisted. Absolutely. All right, this next one. If it wasn't for bad luck, this person would have no luck at all. In fact, they're often portrayed with this hanging over their head. Black cloud. Absolutely, black cloud. Oh, I'm getting a phone call. Don't worry about it. We're going to let it go. Okay. All right. This next one, I'm not talking about card tricks or pulling rabbits out of a hat. I'm talking about seances and Ouija boards. Like magic, right? Evil. Things associated with black magic. Now, this next one, now maybe it's just me, and it could be just me. But to me, if you tell me it's a plague, that's bad enough. I get it. That's why you have to say it's a plague. So we don't say it's just a plague. What do we say? That's the black plague. Woo, or black death. Who said black death? Absolutely, or black death.
You're fine. He was overthinking it.
All right. My mom used to tell me I got to pay attention in school, do my homework, don't get in trouble, because I don't want this on my permanent record. Mark, no one wants a black mark. If I know something about you, but you don't want to tell anybody, I say, if you pay me, what am I doing to you? Absolutely. Black man, don't do this. That's a felony. Don't do that. Now this last one now, and maybe it's just me, perhaps just me, but to me, driving on ice is dangerous enough, ain't it? But we don't say that. What do we say? That's black ice! Woo! That ice will kill you, right? So from the time you were small to the time of the age you are right now, you are constantly being bombarded with this type of material. 11 million bits. You're only consciously aware of 40. The rest doesn't dissipate. It gets logged away in your subconscious. Okay? You use that as mental shortcuts, and the shortcuts can be good, and the shortcuts can be bad. So let's flip it. All right, same thing. I'm giving you clues. I give you half the clue is white. You just repeat after me. All right, if you know the answer. This is the person rides in on the horse, slays the dragon, saves the princess. White knight, right? White knight comes in to save the day. I don't know if anybody here plays chess, but for those of you who play chess, Which color always goes first in chess? White. Always go first in chess. Now I'm Catholic. Now when I say I'm Catholic, I went to Catholic kindergarten, grade school, high school, all the way up through law school at Marquette, right? In my entire Catholic life, I have never seen angels represented as anything other than white. Whether it's in the illustrated Bible, or whether you walk into a church and see the stained glass windows, all are the angels. We can't get one little angel. No. I gave this speech in Westby, Wisconsin, and it was to the school district in Westby. And at this point in this giant auditorium, I give this speech, and someone raises their hand in the back of the room. They're like, "Judge, there is a black angel." I'm like, "Really? Who?" "Lucifer." I'm like, "Oh." Right. I rest my case. In the 1920s, Westerns were really popular. But in the 1920s, we had black and white TV. And so the directors and producers wanted to make sure the audience knew who the good guys and the bad guys were. They used the article of clothing. Anybody know what it was? The hat. And what color hat did the good guy wear? White hat. What color hat did the bad guy wear? Black hat. First see this in 1920, the Great Train Robbery. It was a silent Western. First Western, we see this. The bad guys wore black, the good guys wore the white hats. Even when we moved to color TV, we kept that same theme. Good guys, color TV. Even if the thing you do is bad, if you put white in front of it, it's not so bad. So I tell my kids, don't lie, right? "Oh, it's just a little white lie. Don't worry about that." Right? So from the time you're small to the time of the age you are right now, you are constantly being bombarded with that type of material. Okay? When I told you you didn't stand a chance, you didn't stand a chance. Why? Because it's everywhere. So I'm going to show you this. The criminal justice system, we call this the narrative. Here's the narrative. 92% of black homicide victims are killed by other blacks. Now, I used to be a judge, used to be a prosecutor, and I will tell you that that statistic is 100% accurate. All right? But we have a term for it. Anybody know the term? Black on black crime, right? Now, were you aware that 84% of white homicide victims are killed by other whites? Can someone tell me that term? You ain't never heard of white on white crime. You ain't never heard that, right? So we created a term. We put it in newspapers, blogs, cable shows, news programs, talk radio. You hear it all the time to give you this impression that one race of people is different from everybody else. But in fact, statistically, it applies to every single race: black, white, Asian, Latino. We tend to kill people who look like you. That's the way it happens, right? But we created a term for this one, so it was always burned into your skull. And I said you didn't stand a chance, you didn't stand a chance. So much so that we start this at a very young age. I'm going to show you a homework assignment for my oldest daughter when she was in elementary school. Here's the homework assignment. Homework assignment, you have 4 kids. The kids, you are supposed to draw and trace the face on the kids. 4 kids. White kids, happy and proud. Black kids, sad and angry, right? On its face, it may have no effect on you, but subconsciously, your brain processes all that material. Remember, you're only consciously aware of 40 bits. The rest of this, your brain processes and logs away, doesn't dissipate. It gets logged away in your subconscious brain to be accessed as mental shortcuts. You move one kid, you move one kid on this assignment, it completely changes the dynamic of the system. Okay? Here's another one I just added, because it was also from their assignments. You talked about Jim Crow and laziness and all these things associated. Lazy Lucy, right? I added this just because she's running. I don't understand that one at all. Not even standing still. But I tell you, we start this at a very, very young age. Do you remember this story? Can anybody tell me why this duckling is ugly? Because it's black or brown, depending on which story you're reading. Now, Hans Christian Andersen was the author of this story, and he was sick. And I'm going to show you just how sick he was. So I'm going to relay this story to you. I'm not going to fabricate it in one bit. All these ducklings are born. All the ducklings look exactly alike, except for one. That one, depending on the book you read, is either black or brown. But because that duckling is black or brown, all the other ducklings bully and harass that duckling so badly that he runs away, right? And he goes to hide in a cave for months, right? Now, by the way, this is a children's story, right? Until one day that duckling decides he is going to kill himself. It's in the story. He says, I'm going to run out to the lake and I'm going to drown myself. It's in the story. In the story. So he leaves the cave, he walks to the lake, he's got to jump in and drown himself. When he looks down to jump in, he sees his reflection. And when he sees his reflection, he's no longer black or brown. What color is he? White. And when all the other ducklings see him, they swim on up to him and they're like, you are so beautiful. Well, where have you been? Think about this. We tell this story to children. You want to know why 83% of whites have an unconscious bias against blacks? And why 70% of blacks also have an unconscious bias against blacks? Because you've been ingrained with this your whole entire life and maybe never even knew. And the group that's probably the best or worst at this is Disney. Because Disney has this really hard job, right? They have to come up with themes and concepts that you have to explain to a 7-year-old, right? Which is like impossible, right? But how they do this generally is they use color. So for instance, I'm going to show you a relatively new Disney movie, Maleficent, right? Disney is quite sure that a 7-year-old has no idea what the word Maleficent is. And I'm going to tell you a 50-year-old had no idea what the word Maleficent is. And so I looked it up. What does Maleficent mean? Maleficent means that you're able to do things and influence people with the help of black men. That's what Maleficent means, right? So Disney has to portray to a 7-year-old that this character is bad. And how do they do that? They use some color. That's why she has the black robe. That's why she has the black horns. Because Disney has to make sure that that child knows that this character is bad, right? To reinforce this point, this is Angelina Jolie. So when they were filming the movie, there's a scene in the movie where she goes and picks up a baby. So they do the first take. She picks up the baby starts crying, right? They didn't want the baby to start crying. So they got another, bring me another baby. So they bring another baby. She goes up to the baby, bends down to pick up the baby, that baby starts crying. Bring me another baby. You go through 3 babies. So finally, Angelina Jolie had to bring in her own baby. Because once she went to bend over and pick up the baby didn't cry. But that was her mom. But that effect, that what she was wearing and what she looked like had such an effect on 3 separate infants that they started to cry, right? It's ingrained us at a very young age. Now this is a relatively new Disney movie. I'm going to show you the very first Disney movie ever, and I'm going to ask you if you remember this woman. You remember that woman? Right? She looks that way for a reason. She has the black robe for a reason. She has the black bushy eyebrows for a reason. Because Disney has to make sure that that child says, right? Right? They have to make sure of that. Side note, who does she give that apple to?
Snow White.
Snow White. Oh my goodness. So the big bad witch is an all black. The heroine of the story, Snow White, right? We start this really young. Now, I'm going to put up my favorite Disney movie ever, and it actually pained me to put this in the deck because I love this movie. But I just have to do it. I'm just going to ask you one question. You guys tell me, which lion is the bad one? Right? So you have the Lion King. On one side, you have Simba. Simba has the same mane as every other lion in the Lion King, except one. And that other lion is Scar. But Scar's mane's not like everybody's mane. Scar's mane is black. Scar's nose is black. Because Disney has to make sure that these children say, Simba, I know that's your uncle, but he's bad, right? We start this at a really So I am going to show you a cartoon that everybody in this room has seen. You watched it as a kid. You might have watched it with your kids. You might have watched it with your grandkids. You have seen this cartoon. Because it comes on every year. So I'm going to show you this cartoon. I'm going to ask you, do you know these kids? Right? The Peanuts gang, right? Charlie Brown. So closest to us, we have one member of the Peanuts gang. Farthest from us, we have another member of the Peanuts gang. On one side of the table, we have 4 members of the Peanuts gang. 3 people, 1 dog, Snoopy, right? On the other side of the table,
Even Snoopy.
we have 1 member of the Peanuts gang. Anybody know that character's name? Franklin. Now, when I tell you the story of Franklin, it perfectly describes what we talked about unconscious bias. So there's a teacher in the 1960s in Brooklyn, New York. And she taught black kids and white kids, and they loved the Peanuts game. So one day she said, you know what, I'm going to write a letter to Charles Schultz. Charles Schultz, the creator of the Peanuts game. And she said, I'm going to write this letter, and I'm going to see if he would add a black character. So she said, Mr. Schultz, I teach kids in Brooklyn, New York. I have black kids, I have white kids in my classroom. And I was just wondering if you ever thought about adding a black character so that my black students could feel like they're part of the Peanuts game, right? This is 1960, by the way, right? She's talking about something we talk about all the time now, right? Inclusion, right? She's talking about this in the 1960s. So she sends it off to Schultz. Schultz gets the letter, opens it up, says, she's right. She's absolutely right. It's 1960. I'm going to add a character. Goes to the network. Hey, I'm adding a new character to the Peanuts game. And they're like, yes. And he's like, and I'm adding him to the Thanksgiving special. Yes. His name's Franklin. Like, yes. And he's black. Like, whoa, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Why would you rock the boat? Everything's great. Everybody loves the Peanuts game. Schultz says, this is 1960s. It's Martin Luther King. It's the civil rights movement. We need a black character. Network said no. Schultz says, I'm going to take this to another network to show you how important that was. Prior to the Super Bowl, because once the Super Bowl came, it blew everything up. Prior to the Super Bowl, the highest or most expensive ad buy on TV was during this cartoon. Why? Because this cartoon came on in Thanksgiving. And what holiday comes after Thanksgiving? Thank you so much. I give this talk to high school students. As soon as I say that, they all say, Black Friday! That's not a holiday. Right? Right, exactly. So, if you wanted to sell Cabbage Patch Kids, or G.I. Joe's, Kung Fu Grip, or Rock'em Sock'em Robots, or your Easy Bake Oven, you were going to pay a premium to show it during this cartoon. Because they knew kids are watching, parents are watching, grandparents are watching, right? That's how we knew what we wanted for Christmas, right? We saw it on TV. Things are totally different now, right? So I go to my girls, like, what do you want for Christmas? Like, Dad, we emailed your Amazon list. I'm like, oh, things are totally different now, totally different. So when Schultz said he was leaving the network, that meant something. So they said, okay, we can't lose this money, we can add Franklin. Now, despite the fact that he was willing to leave the network, despite the fact he was adamant Franklin be added, he still drew it like this. Now listen. Remember the definition of conscious bias? A preference for or against a person or group of people. Happens at a subconscious level that we don't even know we're doing it. And I told you the most important part, it runs contrary to our stated beliefs and attitudes. He wanted to add Franklin, but he still drew it like this. Trying to be inclusive. Now the only way you can be less inclusive is if Franklin was sitting by that tree back there. But he's sitting up here. Now, one last thing on this one before I go on to the next one. My daughter said to me that, Dad, it looks like everybody's seated in the chair that you would put out for people for Thanksgiving.
Oh,
Everybody except Franklin, right? Franklin's got that kind of chair like, oh, Franklin showed up. Grab a chair. So he does have a spoon. He absolutely has a spoon. All right, hold on. Hold your question. Write it out.
I just got a question. What year was this picture drawn, taken?
The 1960s.
1960. Okay.
Yep. All right, so here we go. So we talked about cartoons, we talked about homework assignments, we talked about movies, but the group that's probably the worst at it is the media, right? So I'm going to show you this newspaper clipping. And so here's the newspaper page. Sports utility vehicle, caution tape, you have the mugshot of an African-American male, big headline, police arrest burglary suspect. This one story takes up 90% of the page. So the editor wants to make sure that this is the most important story for you to know, right? Fine, police arrest burglary suspect. Got it? Glad they got it, right? Until you read the rest of the page, right? 19-year-old arrested for Tuesday's homicide. I used to be a prosecutor and I used to be a judge. And I'm going to tell you, homicide is just a little bit more serious than that, right? Right? If that wasn't bad enough, bottom left-hand corner, deputy, ex-constable, killed in the line of duty. Now, despite the fact that you have a law enforcement officer killed in the line of duty, despite the fact that you have a teenager who committed a homicide, the editor of this paper wanted you to know that brother right there, right? On its face, it might not have any effect on you, but subconsciously, your brain is processing all this material, okay? So, now, I'm going to show you, in fact, oh, I'll get to that. I'm going to show you this next one. It's a web page from a news station. It's the same date. It's the same charge, but it's told differently. All right? So here's the page. You've got Channel 9, ABC News in Iowa City, Iowa. All right? On the left-hand side, 3, University of Iowa wrestlers arrested, burglary charges pending. Then you have the pictures of the 3 individuals who were arrested for the burglary. Right? Same page, same charge, same date. Coralville Police, Coralville's 5 miles outside of Iowa City, where the University of Iowa is, if you didn't know. Coralville Police arrest 4 in burglary investigation. Then you have the picture of the 4, their hair's not combed. They're not in suit coats and ties, right? They're being represented in mugshot photos, right? So I got a question for you. If you've been arrested for burglary, do you know what you get when you get arrested for burglary? A mugshot, right? And despite the fact that they had a mugshot, the editor of this newspaper chose not to show their mugshot. Here's how important that is. The United States Supreme Court, because when I first became a prosecutor, we used to hand mugshot photos to the jury all the time. The United States Supreme Court said you can no longer use mugshot photos because mugshot photos are highly prejudicial. Highly prejudicial. Whether you are the victim or the defendant. When someone sees it's a mugshot photo, the first thing that we think of is, well, they did something wrong. They did something wrong, right? So now we can no longer use mugshot photos. So I'm going to skip by real quick in the interest of time, and I'm going to ask you if you know these people. Right? So you got Aunt Jemima, pancakes, right? You got Uncle Ben, rice. And a lot of people didn't know that nasty cream of wheat actually has its own master. Cream of wheat is nasty. But people didn't know that cream of wheat had its own spokesperson, and that's Rasmus. Now, what do these 3 individuals have in common? They have a lot, but what do they have in common? What do they have? All black. Anything else?
They're extremely dark.
Food. Yep. Anything else?
They're extremely dark.
Dark skin. Yep. Anything else? Service. Service is a good way to put it. All right. I'm going to tell you this. All 3 of these individuals are slaves. And I'm going to show you why. Aunt Jemima. First of all, Aunt Jemima's the easiest one. Look what she's wearing. She's literally wearing the clothes of a house slave in the time of slavery, right? Literally wearing the same thing. But here's the crazy part about this. Jemima, I told you about Jim Crow, right? There was another character in the 1800s in these shows, also portrayed by a white male in blackface, who would wear a pillow underneath the same clothes that she's wearing, and that character's name was Jemima. In fact, in the 1800s, Jemima was a derogatory term for black women. Like, oh, they're a bunch of Jemimas. That was literally the vernacular of the time, right? If you didn't know that, don't worry about that, because like I told you when I started, we don't teach our history, so don't worry about that. That is a true story. I'm going to show you the very first ad ever for Aunt Jemima. You ready? I's in town, honey. Happy days is here. Time for geek. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? That's the very first ad ever for Aunt Jemima. Anybody know when this ad came out?
64 hours born.
Close. 1950. Not 1850, not 1860, almost 100 years from slavery, we have her dressed in slave, house slave attire, and speaking broken English. Are you out of your mind? And I told you the story of Jemima. People think, oh, Jemima, the Pearl Milling Company is the company that owns. Now, it's not like that, like people are, oh, what do you think, Jemima? I've been black my whole life. I have never met a Jemima. Ever. My entire life, met a black Jemima. Ever. Right? And they didn't pull that out of the air. That is a known term from the 1800s, right? And they just throw it on there and want to act like it's all so innocent. All right? Now, they jazzed her up a little bit towards the end, right? They made it a little better towards the end. But that's the first ad for Aunt Jemima. Now, I'm going to show you the first ad ever for Uncle Ben's. Now, I knew it as Uncle Ben's rice, right? You all knew that? It was Uncle Ben's plantation rice. Right? 1940. Not 1840. 1940. And on the bottom there, it's the master rice recipe. Crazy. Here's the one for nasty cream of wheat. Look at this. Maybe cream of wheat ain't got no vitamins. I don't know what them things is. Are you kidding me? 1920. Not 1820. 1920. Right? I can't think of another group of people who the worst time in their history here, and we would use them to sell pancakes, rice, and mashed potatoes, right? So all that changed in 2020.
Right.
And when that changed in 2020, do you remember what happened when that changed?
George Floyd.
No. Do you remember what happened after it changed?
People were mad.
People lost their damn minds, right? I was watching the news and I saw a guy, no joke, he had a vein popping out of his head, and he was like, "How dare you take Aunt Jemima off my box?" And I was like, "Oh my goodness," right? But I didn't fault him because I know, as I said now twice, we don't teach our history, and so he had no idea that Aunt Jemima was a derogatory term to black people because we don't teach our history. More importantly, now, not only do we not teach it, we're trying to ban it completely, right? So, just to give you a heads up. Now, let's fast forward to this. Anybody know what this is?
Band-Aid.
Absolutely. Does anybody know what color Band-Aid this is? That's a distinct name.
Right.
What'd you say?
Flesh.
Flesh.
Yes.
Naked.
Yes.
Skin tone. Nude. Right? Nude. Right? That's that Band-Aid. Right? Why would you want a flesh, skin tone, or nude Band-Aid? So no one knows, just cut, scratch, whatever you have, right? That's why you have those, right? For 100 years, Band-Aid made one flesh-colored Band-Aid. For 100 years! Now, I'm quite sure the Band-Aid people passed people of color on the way to work every day, right? And despite that fact, they made one skin-colored Band-Aid. Now, let me ask you this. If that flesh-colored Band-Aid was my color, look how ridiculous he looks. But he looks like I look with a flesh-colored Band-Aid, right? You know, the purpose of flesh-colored Band-Aid, you told me, was to hide things. If I see this guy, I'm like, what the hell happened to me? Right? That's for 100 years. All of that changed in 2020. In 2020, Band-Aid said, what? And they decided to make different color Band-Aids.
But didn't they make them after like a, I think it was a small brand?
Brownridges.
Yeah,
Yep.
they made.
Oh, Brownridges did it way before 2020.
That's what I'm
But
saying.
Brownridges has only been around for 2 years, right? 3 years. They were around for 100 years, right?
It's time for somebody else to do it.
Well, that and George Floyd. And George Floyd. But if you don't think it makes a difference, that's me. It makes all the difference in the world. All the difference. Can you imagine that even being considered in a product that's supposed to hide stuff? Like, that's not my shade. Oh, sorry, that's all we got. That's all we got, right? I want to show you this one because this is a real commercial. Asian woman, black man. He has just finished painting her apartment. That's why he has the white paint on his face. He goes up to her and says, "I just finished your apartment. I would like to wash up." She says, "You don't have to wash up. I'm going to give you a Tide Pod. I'm going to put you in the washing machine." And so she gives him a Tide Pod and starts to stuff him inside the washing machine. After the washing machine runs, it opens up. He's Asian. That's a real live ad. That's a real ad. A real ad. Right? Oh, it gets worse. I'm going to show you an ad. I'm going to show you an ad from 2019 for Dove. This is the Dove ad from 2019. Black woman puts on the Dove lotion. She starts to take off her shirt. At the end of the commercial, her shirt's off, and she's a white woman. That's a real ad. That's a real. So what I don't understand about this, can you imagine? Don't you just want to be a fly on the wall in that marketing room, where someone's like, "Excuse me, I got a great idea. What if a black woman uses our lotion and she turns white?" I mean, who the hell does that? It's crazy. It's crazy, right? It's crazy. So, all right. So, real quick, I want to introduce you to a woman by the name of Dr. Diva Painter. Dr. Painter got her undergrad from the University of Wisconsin, got her master's from Stanford, got her doctorate from Northwestern. She's famous for doing these experiments in 5 cities: Milwaukee, Chicago, New York, Boston, and Miami. In those 5 cities, she looked for job openings at equal opportunity employers. She sent 2 resumes to each job. One resume was Connor, a name most associated with white men. The other one was Jamal, a name most associated with black men. Same exact word. They changed nothing but the first name. Results: Connor was 10 times more likely to get a call back interview from Jamal, despite the fact they're the same exact resume. So Dr. Page and her team went to all 5 of those cities, talked to the hiring partners. Why'd you hire Connor? Well, Connor was the most qualified. He had all the GPA, the grade point, the class rank, everything we wanted in our work. Said Jamal had the same thing. They were shocked. Remember, unconscious bias. Covers for or against the first group of people. Happens at a subconscious level. We don't even know we have them. And runs contrary to our stated beliefs. Same thing. Doctors. Same exact thing. Connor and Jamal. When doctors, what's it called? Dr. Dyson was just talking about it. When doctors were shown patient histories and asked to make a judgment about heart disease, they're much less likely to recommend cardiac catheterization to help a procedure for black patients, even when their files are statistically identical to white patients, right? And they also found out that cardiac care, long-term dialysis, and best treatments for cancer, HIV, or for strokes, cancer, HIV were not happening for people of color. Cars. When blacks and whites were sent to bargain for a car, a used car, blacks were offered initial prices $700 higher, and got far fewer concessions, right? So, I told you real quick that I had a kidney transplant. And I got my kidney from my best friend. And her and I are completely different. I mean, completely different. So, I'm black, she's white, I'm male, female. I'm a big guy, she's a little woman. And I live in Milwaukee County, she lives in Waukesha County, and we're like completely different, right? We're completely different. And so, I'll just tell you a story real quick. So, but she's my best friend, and so I got a call from the doctor that I got kidney disease, and I got to have a transplant. So I call her, I'm like, I got bad news, I got to have a kidney transplant. Before I could get it out of her mouth, she was like, oh, you can have my kidney. Like I was asking for sugar. You can have my, and this is my honest to God reaction to her when she said it. I was like, oh my God, I'm so like your kidney will not work, right? She's like, well, let's get worked up and do it anyway. She gets worked up, comes back perfect, right? We do the kidney transplant works out perfect. The reason why I tell you this story, because we were both judging the same thing, is because this is me and her. The reason why I tell you this story is because her and I replicated the car thing in 3 dealerships in the Milwaukee area. So I went first, we both judged, we both make the same amount of money, same thing. I go in and negotiate for a car, got everything. Navigation, sunroof, I didn't even know they had heat formats, but I had that. Got everything, right? I leave, we wait a week, send her back, same dealership, same person I talked to, right? New York, 3 separate dealerships. So much so, and this is the honest to God truth, she has bought my last 2 cars.
Oh.
I am not getting screwed out of it for not her buying my last. In fact, I have her go in, she negotiates, and as soon as she's ready to sign, I jump in like, Airbnb, same thing. If you got a black name trying to get Airbnb, you ain't doing that. In fact, there's a Twitter handle called Airbnb While Black. Follow that for a while. It'll make you cry. So let's get to the good stuff. What can we do to mitigate our unconscious bias? So we've been doing it, right? For the last hour, I've been trying to explain it to you. From the time you're small, the time you're the age you are right now, you've been bombarded with stuff and you didn't stand a chance, right? So now you know. So I always say this. I love this Maya Angelou quote. Do the best you can until you know better. And as soon as you know better, do better, right? So become more aware about it right now. Next, also, don't be colorblind, which was literally the thing I heard all the time growing up as a kid. I don't see color, I'm colorblind. You're like invisible, so you're like, you see me. And what also scares me about this, I used to be a judge and a prosecutor, right? And I know our entire traffic system is based on color, right? So when you tell me you're colorblind, I get a little worried, right? Right? It's the reason why red means stop and green means go. Why freeway signs, no matter where you are in the country, are green. And construction signs are what color? Yellow or orange, depending on where you live, right? I mean, always. We do that because we want to make sure people know what's going on. So you see color. Recognize and appreciate the differences. Here's the greatest thing about where we live right now, right? Unless you are Native, Indigenous, First Nation, your people were brought here or immigrated here. Period. There's no other way you got here. And here's the best part about when they got here. You brought their culture, you brought their food, you brought their music, you brought their clothing, you brought their dance. And what did we do? We said, we are a melting pot. We're going to melt all that away and we're going to be one people. But the problem is we're a nation of immigrants. We all came from different places. So despite the fact you say I'm colorblind and we're all the same, we aren't all the same. So why don't we recognize and appreciate that? That's the beauty of it. I travel a lot, right? And so I was in Holland. And I love Holland. And then I went to Iceland. And I love Iceland. But those are two countries I went to where I was there for a week. I didn't see another black person in two countries, right? No matter where I was. In fact, I saw one black dude. This is a true story. I saw one black dude. He was walking towards me, he had a Yankees hat on, and we were walking down the street in Iceland. And we were walking down the street, he's coming at me, and I was like, oh my God, it's my first brother. I said, what's up? And he spoke French. He wasn't even American. I was like, oh, so much for that. Right? So recognize and appreciate the differences. It's important. It's important. Okay? Next, be aware of the makeup of your social networks, right? Be aware of the people you hang out with. Unfortunately, here in this country, we don't live in the same neighborhoods. Our kids don't go to the same schools. We have very little interaction with each other. It's important that we engage and do things with each other. So I'm going to tell you about something that you can do with. So now I am the director of Marquette Law School's Lubar Center. And what we do is we throw events every month, every like Heritage Month. So February we threw a Black History event. I brought 5 chefs in. They came in and they made meals that were introduced to the American palate by enslaved Africans, right? We seat you at a table with people you do not know. We have a motto. Meet someone, learn something, try everything, right? That's our motto. And we go there and we just talk and you learn and you listen. You learn about why we eat fried chicken, why we eat mac and cheese, because mac and cheese was brought here by enslaved Africans, if you didn't know that. And we talk about all these different things. And then at the end of the night, everybody's met somebody new and learned something. Just had one 2 weeks ago for AAPI month. We had Chinese, Filipino, Hmong, Lao, Thai, and Indian. It was amazing. It was amazing. And they talked about those dishes. And they said, I'll never forget this, they said in China, you can't get egg foo young because they don't make it in China. And they don't make beef and broccoli. They don't make sweet and sour chicken. That's not part, that's American Chinese. And so you got to learn about all these different things, meet somebody different from you. So our next one's coming up in September. If you want to find out, the Marquette Law School Lubar Center, you can Google it. We'll have the event for it. Join our mailing list. You get first dibs. The first 2 events sold out in 6 hours. So please, we only sell 250 tickets. But people on our mailing list get first dibs. So Marquette Law School Lubar Center. And you'll be able to engage with people who are different than you. Next, all this takes internal motivation and habitual practice. You've been hammered with it your whole life. I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to say something. Say the first thing that pops in your mind. Ready? Macaroni and?
Cheese.
All of you said cheese. All of you said cheese. Why did you say cheese? Because of the time you're small, the time you are right now. Inundate. This is the same unconscious bias. We don't eat it. So we don't think about it as much as we're supposed to. Stop and reflect on your thoughts and beliefs and attitudes. If you have any interactions with anybody that is different from you, hire, fire, promote, demote, engage with, please think about what you do before you do it. Things are changing. 2020. Prior to 2020, if you did beauty, give me image search, Google, this is what came up. Not that diverse, right? You do it now, diverse. Not just by ethnicity, but also by size. Because size matters, right? Now, I am a girl dad. As a girl dad, I absolutely hate pageants. So I'm sorry if you were Miss Fond du Lac or whatever it is. I do not like pageants. But the only reason I have this on here, pageants started in America in 1952. Women of color couldn't join until 1976. Right? You know why they couldn't join? Because the judges said they weren't pretty. Right? 2022, all 5 crowns were held by women of color. So things are changing. Our images of beauty are changing. So much so, that's Miss Ireland. No joke. That's Miss Ireland. No joke. Right? All right. So I'm up against my time. Last thing, everybody put your hands out like this. All right? Now put them like this. That's a hug from me to you. Thank you so much.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. Anybody have any questions? You don't have any. I know I'm fully pushing you. Go ahead.
I wanted to ask about marketing companies. Like, has there been any like exposure for the history of our
Yes,
company?
yes. So I went really fast because I only had an hour.
Yeah.
So Dove, have you seen a Dove commercial
Yeah.
lately?
Yeah, they've done
Literally,
a good
Dove
job.
has like
Yeah.
every ethnicity on the
Yeah.
planet, waiting for an alien to come walking out because they have everybody in it. So things are changing that way. You're seeing. Remember ads? When I was growing up in an ad, you would never see two men buying a house, right? Or even a black and a white woman going to buy a car. Now it's all the ads are there. Things are changing.
But have the agencies that are creating those ads, have they also
Yeah, because they're
investigated their
getting
own
younger,
practices?
right? Their generations are now my generation, right? So people, and it gets better with each generation as far as my kids. So when I was growing up, when people said in my high school, when I went to high school, people said, "Oh, they're gay, oh, they're gay," right? My kids don't even think anything about it. Gay, trans, they don't think anything about it. So those attitudes are changing with those generations. Yep.
I'm warm now. I am warm. I can feel my fingers.
Oh, you got
Right? But now you see it. All right. You and I were growing up, we didn't see that. They were all thin rail men together. Right? Yeah.